Hi everyone, it's Mana. On this channel, I often talk about Japanese women, relationships, and cultural differences, especially for those of you who are interested in dating Japanese women or building genuine connections with Japanese people. International relationships can be exciting, but they can also come with unique challenges. Sometimes you may run into misunderstandings or situations that wouldn't happen if you share the same language or cultural background. I've experienced some of those challenges myself, and I've also seen people around me overcome difficulties and build wonderful relationships despite those differences. Along the way, I've learned some valuable lessons. So today, I'd like to share 3 stories that I hope will encourage you to explore international relationships and help you build a stronger, healthier, and more enjoyable relationship across cultures, whether you are already in an international relationship or simply hoping to find love someday. I hope these stories give you a little courage. Let's get started. So, first of all, I would like to tell a little story about my grandparents. My grandfather was born in the United States and lived there for 31 years before moving back to Japan. After returning, he met my grandmother. The interesting thing is that they met through omiai, which is a traditional Japanese matchmaking arrangement where 2 people are introduced through family members or mutual connections. But here's what makes their story so fascinating. My grandmother couldn't speak any English at all, and my grandfather spoke very little Japanese. They didn't even share a common language. Honestly, when I think about it today, I wonder how they decided to get married. It must have been much more challenging than it is now, especially since there were no translation apps, social media, or video calls back then. Of course, life was very different in those days. For many women of that generation, marriage was often an important part of building a stable life. But even so, I've always admired my grandmother's courage. She chose to marry a man who came from a different country, spoke a different language, and had a completely different cultural background. And my grandfather was in a similar situation, having spent most of his life in the United States, so it probably wasn't easy for him to find someone. So it couldn't have been an easy decision for either of them. I actually grew up living with this funny and lovable couple, and I learned so many things from watching them over the years. Looking back, they taught me that a strong relationship isn't necessarily about having the same language, culture, or background. It's about understanding, patience, and caring for each other despite your differences. After they got married, my grandfather developed a brain condition that left him partially paralyzed one side of his body, but my grandmother stayed positive and supported him through everything. Even in their daily lives, my grandfather continued to speak in English most of the time. Of course, they had disagreements now and then, just like any couples, but they always find a way to work through their problems together. I don't ever remember seeing them fight seriously or treat each other badly. There were also difficult periods when my grandfather's health affected his ability to work, and life wasn't always easy for them. But somehow, they always seemed to face those challenges side by side. Marriage is one of the biggest decisions we make in our lives. It's easy to stay together when everything is going well. The real test comes when life becomes difficult. What I saw in my grandparents was more than love. I saw determination. Throughout their lives, they faced challenges that many people would have considered impossible. Yet, instead of breaking their relationship, those challenges seemed to strengthen the bond between them. That's why I believe a strong relationship is not built on convenience. It's built on commitment. Feelings can change, circumstances can change, life can be unpredictable. But when 2 people are determined to walk through life together, they can overcome far more than language barriers, cultural differences, or temporary hardships. That's the lesson my grandparents taught me. Love is not just a feeling. Love begins with a feeling, but it becomes a real true commitment. Sometimes love is a decision. Here's another interesting story from a friend of mine. He's Japanese and married a woman from Taiwan. They now live in Taiwan, have a baby together, and also live with his wife's mother. What's interesting is that their common language is English. However, neither of them is a native English speaker. One day, I asked him how their relationship was going, and he said something that made me laugh. we don't really fight. We just live together as a happy family. Then he added, actually having different native languages might help sometimes because speaking English takes a little more effort for both of us. We don't complain about every small thing before saying something negative. We usually try to solve the problem ourselves first. It's less hassle than trying to explain every complaint in another language. I thought that was such a funny answer, but when I thought about it more, it actually made a lot of sense. Sometimes people say things without thinking when we are emotional, but when communication requires a little more effort, you may pause for a moment and ask yourself, is it really worth arguing about? This is my personal story. I once met someone who was very special to me. He was Japanese and he spoke very little Japanese. At that time, my English wasn't very good either. Most of our communication was through text messages and we didn't even talk that often, but somehow I really liked him. I liked him because I could feel his kindness and calm nature. There were two things that especially drew me to him. First, we spent time exchanging messages, photos, and little stories from our daily lives. Through those small interactions, I gradually got to know both the outside and inside of who he was. Little by little, I discovered his personality, his thoughts, and the things that mattered to him. Looking back, I think that the investment of time and attention is what made him special to me. As time went on, I found myself wanting to create little things for him. Ordinary moments in my daily life became stories, photos, and memories that I wanted to share with him. Second, whenever we spent time together, I felt completely comfortable. We didn't see each other very often, but whenever we did, I didn't feel stressed, pressured, or judged. I could simply be myself. But here's the interesting part. The closer I tried to get to him, the more he seemed to step back. That experience taught me another lesson. A healthy sense of distance can help maintain a good relationship. But when either person starts prioritizing their own comfort over the relationship itself, love often begins to fade. What I learned is that love requires more than attraction and curiosity. At some point, it also requires courage. The courage to be vulnerable, the courage to move closer, the courage to choose someone even when there are no guarantees. Without that courage, a connection may remain a possibility rather than becoming a relationship. Today, people have more choices than ever before, and many of us naturally look for relationships that feel easy and comfortable. But sometimes, when we become too focused on convenience, we can overlook the things that truly matters. I'm not saying that my grandparents' story and my own experience is the answer for everyone. Every relationship is different, and these examples may be exceptions rather than the rule. But these stories have taught me something important. Love isn't just about finding the right person or getting what we want from a relationship. Love is also about what we are willing to give. It's about kindness, patience, understanding, and supporting someone even when things aren't always easy. When you continue to keep those things sincerely, something interesting happens. There's also a quote that I really love from The Little Prince. The fox says, what is essential is invisible to the eye. In the story, the little prince thinks that his rose is just like any other rose, but the fox teaches him something important. His rose is special not because it's more beautiful than the others. He spent his time caring for it. He watered it, protected it, and gave it his attention. That is what made it unique. I think the same is true for relationships. What makes someone special isn't their parents, their nationality, or even how protected they seem. What makes someone special is the time, care, and attention that the two people share with each other. The people we invest our hearts in become special to us. And perhaps that's why the most important thing in life cannot always be seen with our eyes. They can only be felt with our hearts. So if you're looking for love, whether it's with someone from your own country or from the other side of the world, don't give up. Love doesn't always arrive when we expect it, but that doesn't mean it won't arrive. So I will say it loud and clear. Don't give up on finding love. Thank you for watching. Bye.